So, there's been a lot of talk about the game industry, especially in the console space, not growing. Phil Spencer has come out time and time again and said, the HD, the ninth gen console space isn't growing. In fact, it's been stagnant for quite some time. PlayStation fans would have you believe that that is not the case. But when you compare the sales numbers between Xbox and Sony, well, Microsoft and Sony, I guess you should say, there is some truth to it, that the gaming industry is actually not growing, and it has been stagnant. In fact, all that's been happening over the years and over the generations is a hourglass, syndrome, you could say, where they're basically cannibalizing each other to take their share. Even the 75 million consoles that these fanboys are saying that have actually shipped, they have actually sold. They haven't sold 75 million consoles. They've only shipped 75. At best, they're probably looking at maybe 60, 62 million sold, with the others stuck in warehouses, which is great because now they've got supply, so if there ever is a sudden surge of a demand, you're going to get it. Even their numbers over the 3 quarters is very misleading, because at the end of the day, the moment you start using percentages, you're kind of covering up the real data. And I'm going to get into that as well, because it seems a lot of these people just simply don't understand. And the ones that do understand basically want to write stuff in such a complicated form that no one can be bothered to read it, and so they can get away with it. But in this video, I'm going to basically debunk all of that. So let's have the drop and get into it. Warhammer is available right now on Game Pass for Xbox Series X and S. So, as you can see from this already prepared diagram that I have for you, it's going from the PS2, Xbox, PS3, 360, PS4, Xbone, and the PS5 Series S and X. Now, as you can see, the PS2 actually sold 160 million units. Magically 5 million units appeared out of nowhere and, populated just so Nintendo wouldn't actually surpass them. There's no way anyone's going to actually believe 5 million PS2s sold out of thin air. But anyway, we're going to go by the 160 because that actually even works better. Xbox at that year sold 20 million, just over 20 million, but I'm going to round it up to 20 million. So we're looking at 180 million consoles were sold during the PS2 and Xbox era. The next generation that came along was the PS3 and the 360, and the PS3 sold 87 million, and the 360 sold 85. So we're looking at 172 million. The generation after that, the PS4 and the Xbox One, the PS4 sold roughly about 115 million units, and the Xbox One sold roughly about 60 million units. So you're looking at 175 million units. As you can see, between the PS2, PS3, and the PS4 era, it's kind of shrunk and increased, but it's not actually surpassed that 180 million. It's always hovering around that line. Now do keep in mind it was like 87.4, 85.7. I've just rounded it up to the million without the decimals. Now when you're looking at this PS5 and the Series S and X, the PS5 has sold roughly about 60 million units, give or take a couple million. Now I know they said they shipped 75 million, but that doesn't mean sold. And as we will see in a bit with their MAUs, as of April 2024, from their own slides, they only had 49 million PS5 players. So to drastically say that that increased by double from April 24 to the end of year is highly unlikely. So we can estimate that they've roughly sold about 60 million units. Add to that, I believe it was VGC that actually made an article that came out and said that around 25% of those consoles hadn't even been activated. Basically, confirming that these machines were at warehouses waiting to be sold. So this number here is pretty much on point in my opinion. Now when you look at the Series S and X numbers sold, it's roughly about 30 million. So we're sitting at 90 million. Now, this current generation, or what's left of it, would need to now sell the best part of 100 million in order to actually show growth. Whereas, at another 90 million, there is no growth, because you can see it's pretty much flatlined. This is why people like Destin, like Phil Spencer, and pretty much the rest of the community is actually saying that the console market isn't growing. It is staying exactly the way it is. Now, I know some of you are going to come out and say this is BS and all this. These are the factual numbers, right? Give or take a couple million here and there. But the reality is, do you honestly expect PlayStation to sell another 100 million consoles? Xbox is pretty much leaving the series consoles behind in a year's time, potentially moving on to their next console. So at that point, Sony would need to sell another 100 million in order to say, yeah, we're actually growing. It's not going to happen. Now, obviously, the PS5 and the Series S and X kind of had a rough start, so that will definitely impact the numbers that have been sold. But we're like 4 or 5 years into this generation now, and I don't see it hitting the 250 million, where people are saying this doesn't affect anyone. All you're seeing here is that one side is cannibalizing the other. If you look at the PS2 era, you see the 160/20. You look at the PS3 and the 360, they pretty much, Microsoft pretty much cannibalized Sony's share, and then PS4 kind of cannibalized back by eating into Xbox's share of the console. But you can see that they're basically, there's not any real new customers. They're sharing those customers. The actual industry, the player base that's actually interested in this stuff isn't growing. Now, they also posted that picture, right, where they said there's 60% existing customers, 40% new customers, or is it 58-42? Something like that, with the 9.5 million sales that they did. Bear in mind that those 60% are basically wasted consoles, right? They're people upgrading from the PS4 to the PS5, or the PS5 to the PS5 Pro. You're not gaining any new customers there. 60% is a large number of that 9.5 million, give or take roughly about what? About 5.8 million of the users, 6 million of the users from that that is roughly 5.5 to 6 million, users that are basically upgrading with zero value. These are wasted consoles. And considering these consoles were slashed in price so hard over the, festive period, Sony actually took a hit on these consoles. So those are all net losses for Sony. Now, the 40% that are new customers, potentially, they could either be first-time buyers of a console, they could be, Xbox gamers buying a PS5. That's great. But that 9.5 million now looks like 3.5 to 3.8 million. And that's a big contrast between that 9.5. This is why I say the numbers tell a different story, but a lot of people just want to listen to certain people who basically fluff the numbers because they're pretty good at it, and basically tell you a story that isn't true. Because if you break the numbers down, the numbers tell you the story. It doesn't take a genius to figure that much out once they give you the percentage, but they show you a percentage to make it look better. But if they actually gave you the numbers, they wouldn't. And let's be realistic. Once we go back, I know people are going to say that 60 million for the PS5 is bogus. It's 75 million. Sony has the numbers already. Why wouldn't they say sold as opposed to shipped? Ask yourself that question. They're clearly, blanketing over the stuff to make it look better for the investors, and it makes them look better on the front by saying 75 million shipped. Technically, Microsoft could manufacture 100 million Series X's and push them out to the wild and say, hey, we've now shipped 130 million consoles. But that wouldn't mean that they've sold 130. And this is why Sony is, badgering the numbers and making it look like something it's not. And even some of you that actually, some of the PS fans that actually agreed with me, went back and made videos where you openly lied to your community about it. That's crazy, right? Just to say 75 million PS5 sold, that's crazy. But we also have this, right? And this is from John. Xbox may have limited sales, but Sony got the same number of Xbox sold. Going by ponies, they keep saying 25 million that are not using the PS5 as per April 2024. I'd be thinking they're using their PCs. Now, the actual, this is the monthly active users, and you can see, and this is taken from Sony. This isn't something that this guy made or anything. This is from Sony slides themselves. And they're showing you that there's 97 million active users. 49 million comes from the PS4, 49 million is coming from the PS5. That is, those active users are technically, I mean, if you're looking at it as one person per console, then you're looking at 49 million. But what if it's 2 people per console? Now you're looking even less. You see where I'm going with this. But, you know, between that period and the actual festive period, they did sell a number of consoles. So that is why I'm saying that they've probably hit around 60 million. That 75 million is not possible. Add to that, we've also got the fact that, you know, the active users have increased to 129 million. Now, what's clearly happened here is you know, if this is the case with this, and let's say the PS5 has increased to 60 million, or let's just say to 65 million, some of that will have been cannibalized from that 49 million. So let's knock it back down to about 60 million. Where is the rest coming from? Right? So if we say 100 million now, maybe 105 million from the consoles, the other 20 million odd is coming from PC. That's crazy. That's a huge bump. That's almost like 50% of what they were during April. That's insane how much PC is actually delivering to them. Now, I'm looking at this in an average because I don't have the actual numbers. Because Sony didn't give the actual numbers, they just said a flat rate percentage. Because of course they're going to say that, because if they actually gave you the numbers, it would paint a different story. But I hope this has helped demonstrate to those that are disbelievers, or those that don't believe, those that are attacking Destin for no reason, when Destin and everyone else says that the gaming industry, as a, you know, the console user base isn't growing and they need to look elsewhere in order to get those extra customers. They're not lying. This is actual factual information, and I proved it to you with the numbers of consoles sold throughout the generation. It's never really exceeded 180 million. Now, of course, I will add, like I did before, the chip shortages, CVID, and, you know, stuff did probably impact some of that this generation. But the reality is, 90 million in 4 or 5 years, you're not going to get another 100 million consoles sold between now and when the new Xbox and the PS6 comes out. I just don't see it. Then you have that whole situation where, has the industry shrunk if you're not even going to get to 180 million? Right now, consoles need to sell another 90 million. That's a lot of consoles. So I hope this story can now come to an end, because I see a lot of people fighting back against it. You are wrong. The industry is not growing, and I've proved that in this video. I've also proved that you didn't sell 75 million units, you sold around 60 million, with around 10-15 million sitting inside warehouses. I also debunked the whole MAUs coming from only PlayStation players. It is not. As of April, it was 50-50 between PS4 and PS5. This whole cross-generation thing, I believe, hurt Sony and Microsoft, just as bad. But it was pretty equal as of April, so if you're looking at those numbers, add maybe 10% additional, you're looking at basically like 107 million now on the PlayStation consoles. The other 20 odd million is coming from PC. And that is insane, because that means that the PC user base is, give or take, 40 to 50% of what the PlayStation 5 and the PS4 gaming community actually is. That's an interesting statistic right there. It looks a lot worse than it sounds, right? But you guys love your statistics. But anyway, that's the video. Do with it as you will. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, hit that like button, hit that subscribe, hit that bell to stay up to date with all content I release. If you want to support me further, you can do that through my YouTube membership, where you can get content like this earlier. You can also catch me on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where I stream here solo on Tuesdays unless I've got a guest, and on Thursdays I stream with Chili, so hopefully you'll enjoy those too. If not, well, you should join anyway. Right, that's the video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Remain legend.